Wanda Bedard, who I've known for many years now, is founder and president of 60 Million Girls Foundation. She will tell you a lot about the work that they are doing. But I just want to point out a couple of little interesting factoids about Wanda. Very recent, in 2022, Wanda was named a recipient of the Meritorious Service Cross by Her Excellency, the Right Honourable Mary Simon, Governor General of Canada. And in 2019, Wanda was also named the John Abbott College Hall of Distinction, recognizing alumni from the college who have distinguished themselves throughout their careers and their association with John Abbott College.
Thank you very much, Sonia, for doing everything. And it's a great privilege for us, the 60 million girls, to be able to be in this meeting place, because I know we're going to learn a lot from all the work that the researchers are doing here and the other practitioners as well. And it helps inform us on being better funders, on really bringing as much innovation as possible, and of course impact to the projects that we do. So 60 Million Girls is based here in Montreal. We're a public foundation. We started in 2006 with a group of 8 women. We're now about 25 in our team. We continue to be a completely volunteer-run organization. So we have virtually no administration costs, as we like to tell people. More than 99% of the donations we receive go directly to the projects that we fund. We work with Canadian registered charities. We get projects proposed to us every year. We have a project evaluation team that goes through them, and then we choose what we feel are the best girls' education projects. We're kind of geographically blind. We don't really care where the project is taking place. We just want it to have the most impact and to be the most successful. We do clearly support education for girls in the developing world, and we really try to target those girls who are the most vulnerable and marginalized, so where perhaps not a lot of funding is going. And I like to say that we work in very isolated areas, and I thought I'd give a little example of what isolated areas look like. We did a project with Change for Children in Nicaragua, and to get to our final destination, it was a 10-hour drive to the very end of the road, and then it was 8 hours in canoe to get to the area. People often ask, who's my travel agent? Why do I go to these places? So the area is called the Bosawás Biosphere. So it's the largest tropical rainforest in the Americas after the Amazon. As you can see, there's not many electrical lines out there. There's no electricity in most of, I think, all of these communities. Very little cell phone connectivity, and of course, no access to the internet. So to try to bring electricity into these areas is pretty difficult. It has to come in by boat. Here you see the solar panels, and then they have to be brought up by hand and then placed on the roof of the schools. Why do we use technology to ensure a quality education? There are a number of things. It's estimated that there'll be 8 million more teachers needed by 2030, so qualified teachers. Class sizes of 50 or 75 students in a small room is not unusual. I know I saw Sonia teaching 250 students yesterday, but they have the capacity and the technology to be able to do that. Teachers have insufficient training in many isolated communities. It's really hard to attract qualified teachers in those communities where you don't have good infrastructure, where you don't have textbooks and everything that goes with it, and often very poor pay. School supplies are very expensive, and again, they're hard to get. You can imagine places like the Bosawás Biosphere, it's very expensive to try to get supplies up there. So we developed what we call the Mobile Learning Lab. So we have an R&D team within 60 Million Girls. And around 2011, 2012, we were really trying to see, is there not a different way or a better way to get quality content into the hands of students in these very isolated areas? At the time, the statistics, I think, from UNESCO were that it would take another 100 years at the same pace to get all girls into primary school. Just felt 100 years is a little bit too long. So we got inspiration from a number of things. One is Khan Academy. I imagine most of you are familiar with. I mean, it's used throughout North America, Europe, and really around the world. And it was interesting to know that not only Khan Academy is very effective, but they also created an offline version, which again, for these communities that don't have internet access, that's the only way to go. We were also inspired by hole-in-the-wall testing. So that's Sugata Mitra's work in India. He had started off by carving a hole in a wall that was separating his offices to a slum in India. And he embedded a computer, and that one had access to the internet. And he just wanted to see what would children do if they were given no support otherwise. And he was really stunned by how they were able to teach themselves to get on the internet and find all kinds of interesting information. So the idea of self-directed learning really stuck with us. And then finally, universal design for learning to make sure that we're really encompassing all students, different abilities. Bev will be speaking shortly. We had done a project with Cause Canada at the time in Sierra Leone, and Cause had set up a small computer lab, which is a nice name. It's a little bit rustic. It did have a roof over it. There weren't enough computers for all of the girls, but these teenage girls were able to access the computer lab on the weekends, and they were being taught Word and Excel and PowerPoint, so the basics on the computer. And when we went to see them, we thought, wow, a computer could do a lot more. And that's where the idea of Khan Academy and other content came in. Of course, again, there's no internet access. They were using a gas generator to provide electricity for these. So there was a lot of thinking that had to go into place. After I returned back to Montreal, talked to Bev and said, geez, what if we just try to put Khan Academy on these computers and see what happens? And again, in the thinking of it being self-directed learning, in these communities, there's no IT specialist, and it's got to be very simple. And we thought if the children are able to teach themselves, that's the best way to go. And I know the staff in Sierra Leone, thank you very much, the staff in Sierra Leone had a little bit of trouble of saying, well, just put it on, but don't tell them what it is. But thank you very much, you did. And the girls were very frustrated at first because it took them a while to figure out what was there. But I think it was after a half an hour or so, they discovered Khan Academy and they loved it. And they just said it was amazing. And then this continued the following week. The girls actually stood in line to be the first to have access to a computer. They didn't want to share it because they want to get on Khan Academy themselves. And after a few weeks, they started asking for more. Over the course of a couple of years, we went from the USB stick to a Raspberry Pi, which was able to contain a bit more content. And then we went all the way to a Rachel, and I actually brought it because we talk about it a lot, but I think when you see it, the size, it's a very small unit. It has a rechargeable battery inside. And so we use the solar charging system to recharge it. So Rachel is just the acronym for Remote Area Community Hotspot for Education and Learning. It was developed by an NGO in the US called World Possible. And it comes standard with a lot of content. It can hold up to 500 gigs of content, which is a huge amount. It costs about 750 Canadian for the unit. You can connect up to 50 users at the same time. We generally suggest 30 because if you're getting into videos and things like that, it takes up more bandwidth. It has a 5-hour battery life and extended Wi-Fi range. So the Wi-Fi range is about the equivalent of 2 classrooms. And this is an example of some of the content that comes on it standard. So there's English content, or it could be French content or Spanish content. So that's kind of just the base. But the beauty of the Rachel is that you can customize it to wherever you're working, to whoever your students are, whatever grade, what topics they're learning. And clearly in a lot of countries around the world, English, French, or Spanish just won't do it. So a lot of our partners use this and develop content in the local languages. In 2016, we concluded an evaluation study because, it's nice to try these things, but everybody keeps saying, yeah, but does it work? And, where's your proof? As Bev says, we're practitioner researchers. I think we're not academic researchers, but we did an evaluation of which Sonia was able to help us out with the questionnaire. So we followed 1,000 students in grade 4, 5, and 6 from 10 different communities over a 1-year period. So we did baseline testing and then endline testing. And in between, the children had access to the mobile learning lab after school on a voluntary basis for 2 hours a week. We saw definitely an increase in literacy and numeracy, and we have to remember this is self-directed learning. So we never told the kids, well, you must be working on your literacy or you must be working on your math. If they wanted to take the tablet and take pictures all day, they could do that. What was even more interesting and more important to us, because we're really trying to ensure that girls not only start in elementary school, but complete it and go on to secondary school, because that's the really important inflection point, if you like, in a girl's life. There's so many obstacles out there that we felt if having access to the mobile learning lab could increase their self-confidence and their intrinsic motivation, it would give them that many more tools to just push back and push through the difficulties that they're going to find. The other nice thing about this is children love it. Much like children here, you put a tablet or a smartphone in their hands, it's really hard to get it out again. And we've been told over and over by our partners that when the students know that they're going to have access to the tablets, absenteeism is about zero. So just that is a huge thing too. If it's something that can attract the kids into school, it's great. And the kids have a tendency, of course, to go back home and talk about it. We've often had questions, well, you're putting expensive equipment in these very impoverished communities. What's going to happen to it? Clearly, any good project has to start with community engagement. If the community doesn't believe in what you're doing, there's no hope for it to go through. So that's where our partners come in. They're in the field, over many, many years and decades, and they know the communities. And so when the parents see the enthusiasm that the students have and their interest in learning more and the impact it has on their learning, they're very, very welcoming of the technology. This is a picture, again, of a project with Change for Children in Guatemala. In this case, they used kind of notebook-type units. The mobile learning lab is very flexible. We've been in contact with NGOs that use it in hospital settings. They put content on there for training of health workers. It can be used for anything. It can be used for primary school or high school or adults. So it's really a clean slate, if you like, and then it's just whatever content that you put on it. And girls in particular have often mentioned that they like it because we try to make sure that there is information on sexual health and reproduction, and they feel that they can learn about it in private because it's often a very taboo subject. They won't be able to talk about menstruation or any of those things with their mother or their sisters. So this is one area where you can put quality content on there that they have access to. So over the years, we've put in place many mobile learning labs. There's about 400 in place around the world in over 20 countries now. They weren't all funded by us. We funded a great number of them, but we often get calls from NGOs saying, oh, that's really interesting what you're doing. How can we set it up? And so they find their own funding, but we'll help them out technically, share our experience with them and so on. We estimate that on a weekly basis, there's about 100,000 students who have access to the content. And just a last little note, I'm going to do a little plug for my favorite students here today. In 2022, we were working with students from the Master's Policy Program at the Max Bell School of Public Policy. It was their policy lab, and there was 6 students, and they worked with us for about 6 months to see how we could integrate climate action into girls' education programs. Clearly, all our partners are feeling the impact of climate change in the communities where they work. It's really aggravating a lot of situations, making it really difficult, and we thought, what can we do as an organization to try to help increase that content and make those connections in that area? So we've been reaching out to NGOs in the environmental sector, certainly our partners, and setting up different discussion groups. But we were very fortunate to get a call from 2 students from McGill's JED Consulting Club who offered to do some pro bono work for us. And after a lot of brainstorming and thinking, we thought what we're really having trouble with is finding quality content on climate change and climate action for students in the developing world. There's a lot of content out there for students here, but it's just not the same context and not viable to put on the Rachel there. So altogether, we came up with the idea of a hackathon. So there'll be a hackathon on McGill campus in March of 2024, and the goal of the hackathon is to create a video game on climate action, specifically targeting students in the developing world. It'll have to be an offline game, and it'll be put on the Rachel, and of course, we have good coverage with that. We have many of our partners who are already ready to join. We're reaching out to partners in the environmental sector as well, and looking, of course, for technology people to help us. So Kai and Paige are here today, and if you have any more questions about that, they'll be going through the different classes here at McGill to talk about it. But we feel this is something, and it's also a way to bring in the different sectors so we're not working in silos, really working together, and it'll be something, of course, that's open source, will be available to anyone, and we know there'll be some amazing ideas come out of it that we sure will have traction on a lot of other projects as well. So that's my presentation for today. Thank you very much.